Julio, a 65-year-old black man, sat in his modest room, surrounded by memories of a life full of challenges and triumphs, as he prepared for one of the most important days of his life, his adopted daughter Clara's wedding. He wore his best suit, a beautiful navy blue outfit he saved for special occasions. Every movement, from adjusting his tie to polishing his shoes, was done with care, reflecting the respect and love he felt for Clara. As he looked in the mirror, Julio couldn't help but remember the day he first met her. It was over 20 years ago when Clara, just a 6-year-old girl, tragically lost her parents in a car accident. Julio, who was working as a taxi driver at the time, was the first to arrive at the scene. He vividly remembered the scene. The wreckage of the vehicle, the distant sound of sirens, and, most of all, Clara's scared eyes as she cried inconsolably next to her parents' bodies. Without hesitation, he took her in his arms, promising himself that this little girl would not be left alone in the world. "They're in a better place now, little one," he murmured that night, trying to soothe Clara, who was sobbing in sadness. "And I will be here for you always." The years that followed were filled with challenges, but also countless moments of joy and growth. Julio remembered the sleepless nights helping Clara with her schoolwork, the advice on friendship and love, and the many shared laughs. He was proud of every one of her achievements, from her high grades in school to her admission to medical school. And now, seeing her about to get married, he felt an indescribable emotion. After finishing his preparations, Julio picked up the small bouquet of flowers he had bought for Clara. He knew how much she loved flowers, especially daisies, which always reminded her of her biological mother. With a deep sigh and a serene smile, he left his house and headed to the luxurious church where the ceremony would take place. As he walked, his mind was filled with memories of the past. He recalled when Clara turned 10 and he gave her a bicycle, despite their financial struggles. He remembered the nights he stayed up with her, holding her hand as she cried over the absence of her biological parents. These memories were living proof of the love and dedication he felt for her. Upon arriving at the venue, Julio was immediately stopped by security who, seeing his simple attire and advanced age, assumed he was just a taxi driver trying to crash the event. "Sorry, sir, but you can't enter here," said one of the guards, crossing his arms and looking him up and down with disdain. "I am the father of the bride," Julio tried to explain calmly. "My daughter Clara is waiting for me." The security guards exchanged skeptical looks, and one of them laughed. Dry, humorless sound. "Father of the bride? You must be joking. Come on, get out of here before we call the police," insisted the other, pushing Julio back. Meanwhile, inside the church, Clara was starting to worry about Julio's delay. She was anxious at the altar, glancing at the entrance every moment, hoping to see him walk through the doors. The guests were murmuring in anticipation, feeling the rising tension. "Fernando, where is Dad?" Clara whispered to her fiancé, her eyes filled with concern. Fernando squeezed her hand, trying to comfort her, but he was starting to get anxious himself. Julio's absence hadn't gone unnoticed, and at that moment, Clara felt a pang of fear. She knew that for Julio, being present that day was as important as breathing. Something must have happened, and the worry in her heart grew with each passing second. Outside, Julio continued trying to explain his relationship with Clara. The security guards remained unyielding, treating him with disdain and humiliating him because of his appearance and age. He knew he needed to find a way in. His heart was set on not disappointing Clara. Every attempt seemed futile. Standing tall and maintaining a calm demeanor, Julio took a deep breath as he tried to communicate with the guards at the entrance of the luxurious church. "I am Julio, Clara's father," he said, his voice firm but with a hint of plea. "She's waiting for me. I need to get in." "Father of the bride?" One of the guards scoffed, crossing his arms. "You look more like a taxi driver trying to sneak in." "Please understand," Julio insisted, feeling the humiliation grow inside him. "I've raised her since she was a child. She is my daughter." The guards looked at each other, laughing disdainfully. "Look, sir, we have a job to do. We can't let just anyone in." Inside the church, Dr. Alvaro, one of the guests, was flipping through the wedding program when an old photo caught his attention. It was an image of Clara as a child beside a man he immediately recognized as Julio. Alvaro stood up suddenly and rushed to Fernando, who was already showing signs of concern over Julio's absence. "Fernando," Alvaro said, slightly out of breath, "I think there's a misunderstanding at the entrance. Clara's father, Julio, is being stopped by security. They must have mistaken him for someone else." Alarmed, Fernando quickly apologized to Clara, was visibly nervous, and ran to the church entrance. Upon arrival, he found Julio surrounded by the guards, who continued to treat him with disrespect. "What is going on here?" Fernando asked, his voice firm and filled with indignation. The guards turned around, surprised. "Mr. Fernando, this man claims to be the father of the bride, but he doesn't seem very trustworthy." "He is Clara's father," Fernando nearly shouted, anger evident on his face. "How dare you treat him like this? He is our most important guest." An awkward silence fell as Fernando stepped forward, standing beside Julio, whose face now showed visible distress. "Forgive me, Julio," Fernando said, gently holding his arm. "This is a terrible misunderstanding." A murmur began to spread among the guests present at the church entrance, who were now watching the scene with curiosity. Julio, trying to maintain his composure, took a deep breath and nodded at Fernando. "It's all right, Fernando. Let's go inside." The embarrassed security guards stepped aside, and Fernando led Julio into the church. When Clara saw her adoptive father, she couldn't hold back her tears and ran to him, hugging him tightly. "Dad, I thought something had happened to you," Clara exclaimed, sobbing. "I'm here, my daughter," Julio replied, stroking her hair. "I wouldn't miss this moment for anything in the world." The guests, moved by the scene, applauded as Clara and Julio walked together to the altar. The security guards, now shrunk back and visibly worried about the consequences of their actions, watched from the background, full of regret. Julio felt a wave of emotion and relief, realizing that despite the incident, the love and respect he felt from Clara and Fernando, unshaken. He knew this moment would be remembered not for the embarrassment he suffered, for the unity and love that overcame any barrier. Fernando felt his blood boil as he looked at the security guards, who with apprehensive expressions tried to justify themselves. "Can't believe what I'm seeing," he said, his voice heavy with indignation. "This man is Julio, Clara's father. How dare you treat him this way?" The guards stammered, visibly embarrassed. "Sir, we didn't know." One of them tried to explain. Fernando didn't want to hear any more. He turned to Julio, who, despite the humiliation he had endured, maintained a dignified and calm posture. "Julio, I'm so sorry about this. Please accept my apologies on behalf of everyone here." Julio took a deep breath, making an effort to regain his composure. His voice was firm, but with a note of sadness. "It's all right, Fernando. Let's go inside. Clara must be worried." As the two men walked towards the church, the scene quickly changed. The guests, who had previously been focused on the altar, now fixed their eyes on Julio, who walked down the aisle with impressive dignity. When Clara saw her father, she couldn't contain her emotions. Her eyes filled with tears and she ran to him, hugging him tightly. "Dad, I was so worried," Clara said, her voice choked with tears. "I'm here now, my daughter," Julio replied, tenderly stroking her hair. "Let's enjoy this moment." With Clara by his side, Julio walked to the altar, where Fernando was already waiting for them. The guests applauded, moved by the touching scene. The security guards, meanwhile, tried to remain unnoticed at the back, clearly uncomfortable and fearing possible repercussion. When Julio and Clara reached the altar, Fernando took his bride's hand, and together, the three of them formed a picture of love and unity, moved everyone present. "Ladies and gentlemen," the officiant said, resuming the ceremony with a smile, "today we witness not just the union of two souls, but also the strength of family love that overcomes any adversity." As the ceremony continued, the guests still cast furtive glances at Julio, reflecting on what had just occurred. Clara, holding Fernando's hand tightly, couldn't help but send affectionate looks to her father, whose presence meant so much to her. After the crucial moment of the "I do," applause echoed through the luxurious church, and Julio, fighting back tears of happiness, felt a wave of relief and gratitude. He had overcome so many challenges to be there at that moment, and now he saw his adoptive daughter starting a new chapter in her life. As they left the church, the guests awaited them with smiles and congratulations. Clara looked at her father and with a gesture, indicated that he should walk beside her. Together, they descended the steps of the church, receiving well wishes and words of affection. Fernando, observing the scene, felt even more determined to ensure that the future would be filled with happy moments and free from prejudice for Clara and Julio. He knew that the strength of this man, who had embraced Clara with so much love, would be an inspiration to many. The security guards, still embarrassed, watched from a distance, reflecting on their actions and the impact they had. They couldn't avoid the feeling of guilt, but they also saw the greatness in Julio, who, even after the humiliation, remained dignified and calm. During the reception, Julio couldn't help but let his mind wander through fragments of the past, as if each word from the officiant was a trigger for deeply held memory. He vividly remembered the difficult days when, after Clara's parents' death, he took her in with a heart full of love and hope. The financial situation was precarious, but his desire to provide a loving home for the girl was greater than any material hardship. He recalled the sleepless nights when Clara cried for her parents, and he, not knowing what to say, just held her tightly, giving her the security that he would never abandon her. The ceremony continued with moments of deep emotion. The officiant, recognizing Julio's importance in Clara and Fernando's lives, invited him to give a speech. Julio, with his heart racing and his voice choked with emotion, walked to the pulpit under the watchful eyes of the guests. He began hesitantly, but soon the words flowed naturally, filled with emotion and sincerity. Dear friends and family, today is a day of great joy and fulfillment for me. Seeing Clara, my adopted daughter, find love and happiness with Fernando is a dream come true. Life presents us with many challenges, and I've had my share of them. But despite all the adversities, my love for my daughter has always been my greatest motivation. Love gives us the strength to overcome barriers and makes us believe that even in the darkest moments, there is always light. The guests' eyes filled with tears, and Clara, standing beside Fernando, hardly contained her emotions. Julio continued, his voice strong. Family is not just about blood, it's about choice, dedication, and love. And I chose Clara, just as she chose me. Together, we've overcome many obstacles. And today, seeing this wedding happen is proof that love always wins. After the speech, the ceremony continued with deeply emotional moments. The vows exchanged between Clara and Fernando were filled with sincere promises and shared dreams. When the couple kissed, sealing their union, applause echoed through the church, and Julio felt a wave of pride and happiness fill his heart. At the reception, the atmosphere was celebratory. Guests gathered in groups, chatting animatedly, while soft music filled the luxuriously decorated venue. Clara, holding her father's hand, approached a small stage set up in the hall. With a radiant smile, she asked for everyone's attention to share a story that few knew in full. Dear friends and family, today is a very special day for me, and I'd like to take this occasion to share the story of an extraordinary man, who is my father, Julio. He took me in when I lost my biological parents, and since then, he has been an example of love, courage, and dedication. Julio not only gave me a home, but he taught me the true meaning of family. He gave up many things to ensure I had a full and happy life. The guests turned their gazes to Julio, who, overwhelmed with emotion, tried to hold back his tears. Clara continued, I want everyone to know that without him, I wouldn't be here today. He is the reason I am who I am, and I am eternally grateful for everything he has done for me. Dad, you are my hero, and I love you more than words can express. Warm applause filled the hall, and Julio, with a heart full of love, hugged Clara tightly. The reception continued with an atmosphere of unity and joy, as the guests, touched by the story of Julio and Clara, felt inspired by the power of love and resilience. That night was destined to be unforgettable, not just for the wedding celebration, but for the powerful demonstration, true love and dedication, and overcome any adversity. Julio, looking around, felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that his journey, full of challenges and victories, been worth it. The security guards, still wearing worried expressions and tense faces, could hardly focus on the lively reception following the wedding ceremony. They knew a conversation with Julio was inevitable, and the fear of the consequences hung over them like a dark cloud. Didn't take long for Julio, with his calm and firm voice, to call them for a private talk. One of them, visibly uneasy, approached Giulio reluctantly. "Mr. Giulio, we want to apologize for what happened," said one of the guards, his voice trembling. Giulio looked at them with a serious expression, but there was no anger in his eyes. He took a deep breath before responding. "I understand you were doing your job, but prejudice cannot justify treating someone with disrespect," Giulio began. "What happened today wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was a reflection of something much bigger and sadder in our society." The guards hung their heads, ashamed. Giulio continued, his voice now filled with empathy. "I'm not here to punish you, but to educate you. Every person has a story, a journey. I adopted Clara when she lost her parents and did everything I could to give her a dignified and happy life. I never expected recognition or rewards, but respect is something everyone deserves, regardless of appearance or age." One of the guards, with tears in his eyes, interrupted. "Mr. Giulio, I am truly sorry. I never imagined I would cause so much pain to someone who has done so much for another person. I promise I will rethink my actions." Giulio nodded, satisfied with the sincerity in the apology. Forgiveness is an important step, but change is essential. Prejudice needs to be fought with education and understanding. I hope this situation serves as a lesson for all of us. The conversation ended, and the security guards, still shaken, returned to the reception, where the atmosphere of joy and unity prevailed. Clara, who had observed the conversation from a distance, approached Giulio, holding his hand affectionately. "You've always been an example, Dad. Thank you for your generosity," Clara said, her eyes shining with emotion. "My dear, love and understanding are what make us human. The only way to combat hate is with empathy," Giulio responded, embracing her. The reception continued, and the story of Giulio and Clara deeply touched the guests. There was a new energy in the air, a sense that something important had been learned that night. The guests chatted animatedly, many reflecting on their own attitudes and prejudices. In a corner of the room, a group of friends discussed the impact of Giulio's story. "It's incredible how inspiring his life is. He raised Clara with so much love and dedication, even while facing so many difficulties," said one of the guests. "And to think we almost missed the chance to hear this story because of a misunderstanding. We need to be more aware of our prejudices," added another guest. Meanwhile, Giulio circulated among the guests, receiving compliments and thanks. Each word of support and recognition was a reminder that his journey of overcoming obstacles had left an indelible mark on everyone there. The room filled with music and laughter, and the celebration continued with a renewed lightness. Giulio and Clara's story had united everyone in a common feeling of love and respect. The night went on, illuminated by the certainty that, despite adversities, power of love and empathy could transform lives and hearts. During the party, the atmosphere was pure celebration and joy. However, a particularly special moment was about to happen. As the party continued, with music and dancing filling the hall with joy, sudden commotion near the entrance caught everyone's attention. One of the guests, an influential and notoriously prejudiced businessman, had started arguing heatedly with a waiter. "Do you know who you're talking to?" Businessman roared, visibly agitated. "I won't be treated this way by someone like you." The waiter, a young black man, remained calm, but his eyes showed the tension. Giulio, observing the scene from a distance, felt an uncomfortable sense of déjà vu. He knew he needed to intervene before the situation escalated. Giulio approached with firmness and dignity, placing himself between the businessman and the waiter. "What's going on here?" Giulio asked, his voice firm but calm. "This insolent waiter," businessman began. Giulio interrupted him. "I saw everything. The young man was just doing his job. Prejudice has no place here." The businessman, still furious, tried to argue back, but Giulio's presence and the attention of the guests made him back down. Clara and Fernando, noticing the commotion, also approached. "Sir, this is a celebration of love and unity," Clara said firmly. "We won't allow prejudiced attitudes to ruin this moment." Fernando supported his wife, looking the businessman directly in the eyes. "We ask that you leave if you can't respect our guests and staff." The businessman, embarrassed by the public reprimand, muttered something incomprehensible before hurrying out of the hall. The guests applauded the actions of Giulio, Clara, and Fernando, reinforcing the atmosphere of unity and respect that permeated the event. That night was destined to be unforgettable, not just for the wedding celebration, but for the powerful demonstration that true love and dedication can overcome any adversity. Giulio, looking around, felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that his journey, full of challenges and victories, had been worth it. The young waiter, visibly relieved, nodded his thanks to Giulio, smiled gently in return. "We all deserve respect," Giulio said, placing a hand on the young man's shoulder. "Keep doing your job with dignity." The incident, though tense, served as a powerful reminder of why everyone was there. The foundation created in Giulio's name couldn't have a more relevant and urgent purpose. Party continued with renewed energy. The guests, inspired by the example of Giulio, Clara, and Fernando, embraced the celebration with even more enthusiasm. The music resumed, and the dance floor filled with joy. That night, love and unity triumphed, and the story of Giulio and Clara became a symbol of hope and transformation. Every smile, every hug, every word of kindness was a tribute to the power of love in overcoming all adversity.